during the pre-ideation and ideation phases. You will know that you have comps of similar titles that have released perhaps recently, targeting the same audience or the same general genre, and that will give you a sales data, and you can basically estimate an average of those titles as being your sales target. If you are following in the footsteps of a first entrance, so basically, let's say you wanted to create a battle royale game because you saw the success of PUBG and Fortnite. You should expect that your sales will be discounted, meaning by the time that Apex Legends hits the market, even though it's a fantastic game with fantastic production values, it's simply not going to be as big as Fortnite or even Overwatch. And so if you're following in the footstep of a giant, please expect to be a much smaller giant at the minimum. So be careful with the comps. Sometimes that can be misleading because you have oversized success that cannot be, it's impossible to replicate.
Totally.
Yeah. Also, at the start of the production phase, you, or more precisely the publisher for your game, assuming that you have one, should start to think about the marketing strategy for the title. And even though you have maybe 6 plus 9 months, maybe 1 year or 2 years of development ahead of you, it's actually never too early to start thinking about this stuff, because it's very time consuming to identify the correct strategy, to ensure that you have a multi-layered approach. For example, yes, you may buy users on Facebook, right, through ads. Expensive, but effective. Or maybe you also want to use influencers or streamers to advertise your game. And that stuff can be a little bit harder to get going. And can be very expensive, and you have to make sure that you have the right streamers involved. And there's a negotiation that you have with each of these people, and there need to be KPIs that you're tracking against your marketing plan. So the reason I'm mentioning this stuff is not a core skill that I have or we at Amber have, but if you're self-publishing or if that's your intent, startup production phase is when you should start also thinking about marketing. Like, how are you going to do it? How are you going to buy the users? Do you have the funds to do that? If you don't have the funds to do that, you should prompt another process of finding the funds. Most of that goes away if you have a publisher, because the publisher will insist on controlling the marketing strategy. I will not completely relegate it to them. I think it's important to ask for updates, like, hey, how's the marketing strategy going? Can you see like at least a vision document for how we're going to approach the marketing of the title? Because you can potentially contribute some ideas, and you want to make sure that they're getting ready, and treating your title with respect. Okay, so assuming that we have all of those, and the documentation that we compiled previously, the game design document and the technical design document, we can greenlight into production. And in production, it will become very important that you track against your production plan. So this is what milestone tracking means. Are you hitting your goals? That kind of gives you the development velocity. Are you hitting every milestone? Are you completing everything? In Agile, you have a backlog. Things that you are not delivering within a sprint kind of flows into the backlog, and then the assumption is that you have buffered your schedule sufficiently so you can kind of clear from the backlog as you continue to progress in your development. That sometimes doesn't happen, and it kind of prompts a come to Jesus moment, like, hey, we have this big backlog that we've accumulated, we have to burn through the backlog. Are we going to insert another sprint to just burn that backlog, or are we going to descope? Again, it's quality, time, scale, scope, sorry, cost. Quality, time, scale, no. Quality, time, and scope. And one of them will have to give in order for you to attack your backlog. And please don't attack your quality.
Wow.
It's just time or scope. Also hitting at quality, that's a little bit more difficult to quantify. Like, okay,
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
How do you know that you're actually achieving more quality, right? I mean, I understand that experience, I mean, goes a long way here, but
you can use external observers to tell you whether you're hitting the quality that you have initially communicated. Let's not forget about this time you have a vertical slice that should exemplify final quality in your title. So now if you're on level 15 out of 20, right, you've created 15 levels, and then you compare the vertical slice with level 15 just delivered, and it simply doesn't look that good.
Right.
You know, the level design is sloppy, it's rushed, it's you know, the art is not polished, you know, the game is buggy as hell, you know that the quality is suffering at that point, you know, and so that's a good comparison. Also, having people from outside of your immediate group kind of look at that thing and be like, no, it looks like shit, dude.
Yes. Just be super honest.
It's a similar question. How to tackle these? I mean, in this production, maybe at the first level, you actually don't know. You have a good idea by the vertical slice, but you will learn how to make your game better. So maybe the first levels are not as good as the next ones, or maybe it is exactly opposite, and the first levels looks awesome because all the energy and motivation and
everyone's excited, doing their best work. It's like the thrill of discovery, and then routine hits. What I'm seeing in the production phase usually is not that the team improves, is that everything, all your indicators are starting to like drop, including quality. So it's rare. You may get faster at doing certain things, but quality will definitely suffer due to routine.
Okay.
Yeah, you've been working on it for a long time. It's kind of going through the motions. Oh my God, we're never going to be done with this. There can be some team tension. You know, people are getting kind of burned out for, you know, working hard for many months. Maybe you're crunching, which exacerbates all your issues. Too. Yes.
And what would you think about making like the whole game in a certain quality that is not like the 100% quality, but is finished and is usable? It's something that you can turn in, and if you got time left and money left, you can start like putting up the quality of the entire game, but at least you have got something that is going to be able to be solved, instead of having like a piece that is really, really good and then a piece that is really crappy. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's an interesting idea. Here's the thing that you have to be cognizant of. Most often in games you are playing in the black ocean, meaning that your title will stand against 10,000 other apps that are being released into the App Store every week. In order for you to stand out and get users and get some virality and get some monetization going, if you're talking about the App Store, you will need that first version of the game to look pretty damn good. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect, and yes, you can continue to perfect your game once it's out in the market, especially if it's a live game, right? If it has live ops, you will polish every feature of the game and you'll continue out content. But the problem that I see with delivering everything at 80% is that you're discounting on your quality, and that will have that will be problematic in a competitive, from a competitive standpoint, meaning that you're competing against other games, sometimes in the same genre that have similar characteristics, and your game will maybe not be good enough. What I would recommend instead of going from 100% to 80% as a mindset. I would rather focus on your MVP. MVP is a lean concept, most valuable product, meaning the core features that are most critical to the experience. Instead of delivering 100 hours of gameplay, deliver 20 hours of gameplay, but highly polished, highly refined, so that you have a decent chance to compete against in the open market. You see what I mean? Instead of making everything at 80%, just make less levels at 100%.
Yeah, so I do believe that in order to complete something, you have to compromise quality. It's better to shrink the project.
Yes. Shrink. I would shrink for the competitive situation. To manage the competitive situation, I would shrink with high quality rather than keep the original scope at lower quality. There's also, again, you do have, even if you have shrunk at, let's say, 100% quality, during live operations, you can go beyond 100%. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can hit a higher quality target that you even envisioned initially. Anything can be improved. Your art can be better. Your game design can be further optimized and refined. So you'll go beyond 100% kind of anyway. So think of live ops as your opportunity to improve on everything that you have. But if your first impression with the user base is not quite there, you'll never have the chance to live operate your game. It will fail, and you'll never get a chance to continue to work on it. Because if it's not generating recurring revenue, if we talk about a free-to-play mobile game, or even a PC title, there's recurring revenue from a premium PC title on Steam. If you create something beautiful, you have the chance of being, launching, getting a bunch of users, getting kind of word of mouth spreading. Maybe some reviewers are looking at your title, giving it high marks. That gets you more users, and then the awards season comes in. Maybe your title is being awarded at some competition or some, I don't know, what is a golden joystick, or the Game Awards are happening, I believe, this week.
Sky. Congrats.
Okay. Yeah, whatever it is, maybe your title can be recognized, maybe even nominated. Even if you're nominated, you're going to get more users. So even though the live ops concept primarily applies to free-to-play games, even a premium title has the opportunity of live operations later down the road, because you are continuing to acquire users through the success of your initial release. Usability. Obviously, you should test throughout your game development. When you hit, the minimum required, I would say, when you hit alpha, have a limited test. Easier to do in mobile or an online game, a PC online game. Harder to do with a premium title, but not impossible. There are playtesting services that provide the service out of the box. Get it into the hands of the users. Check your own assumptions. Make sure it's fun. Make sure you understand where are the pitfalls. The game product evaluation, by the way, that primarily pertains to premium titles. You can contract freelance journalists to write the mock reviews for your game. And that can give you an idea of where the Metascore lies. It's a way to approximate Metascore. It's also a way to get a particular journalist to pay attention to your title, because if they've reviewed it once, they will want to take a look at it whenever you have your open beta or whenever you have your worldwide launch. A/B testing, mostly for online games, and I don't fully recommend it because A/B testing is very resource intensive. For those of you that are not familiar with the concept, it's like providing your user base. Let's say you've already soft launched your game and it's being played actively by users, and you have 1,000 users. You're segmenting a particular feature and having two options on how that feature should be deployed to half of your audience for one and half of the audience for the other. And then you measure engagement or you measure retention. You can have any KPIs that you're basing your decision on to figure out which feature is the best. the reason I don't fully recommend it is because it's expensive, meaning that you have to create 2 different features at the same time instead of just one. But sometimes though, you don't know what you don't know, and the only way to find out is to do exactly that. But again, if common sense can take you a long way here, you know, deciding between 2 styles of creating a feature, and that basically doesn't require the testing component. Yes?
Say, well, I guess this is something you get less and less as you grow as a company. But say a publisher or a client wants a feature or wants you to work with a tool that you've never worked with before. Would you rather R&D and then develop, or learn as you go?
I would rather R&D. If I can afford it. Sometimes you simply cannot afford it. And I think any developer will tell you, yeah, of course I would want to R&D first. I want to know, understand the tool, feature, solution, SDK exhaustively before I start integrating into the game. But sometimes you don't have the luxury of time. So in that situation, I would just learn as you go, wing it, and hope for the best. It's really kind of an impossible ask if you don't have time to do the R&D. The question can also be, if I don't have to do the R&D, do I force the publisher to pay me extra to do the R&D? It will be an extremely hard sell to the publisher to tell him, hey, I actually am not very competent in this feature that it's required. They'll be like, okay, that's not my problem. You go figure it out. Yeah. Ideally, you've isolated this risk much earlier in the development process. This is not a production phase concern. You should, yes.
Do you integrate in some way the potential community players into the scope of the production?
Absolutely. First of all, if this is kind of what this is. When we're saying playtesting, you can playtest a premium game, but if you have an online PC game or a mobile game, you can soft launch. And you can think of soft launch as the alpha to beta period for a premium title. You have the core features, they're unpolished, everything may be at 80%. It doesn't matter, you can still put it out there to a small sample of users. Anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 will deliver statistically relevant data for you. You can have a kind of limited release, you can advertise it, you can advertise a soft launch and hopefully enough people sign up. Or you can acquire users for your soft launch. You can put an ad on Facebook that is targeted to your particular demo. Women over 40 that like to play Bejeweled or Candy Crush Saga. You can target fairly well on Google these days, or on Facebook these days. You can target on Google too, but you're not getting users as directly as you would through Facebook. And that will give you a statistically relevant sample. And with that sample, you can do all sorts of testing. You can A/B test features. You can use your analytics engine to draw in engagement, retention, virality data for your title. So your soft launch will absolutely be about optimizing or looking at actual user behavior and optimizing your feature set based on what they tell you.
It is a task for the producer to read and integrate these maybe new incomes, or it is from another.
If you're referring to reading the community, interpreting what the community wants, the producer is always involved with that, but it's the primary task of the product manager. okay, the business intelligence person that is looking at your analytics feed and interpreting it and issuing recommendations to the designers. You know, quant-based recommendations to your designers. That's their primary job. Now, on a small team, you may not have a product manager. The producer will kind of have to do double duty on that. But ideally, you have that specialized resource. All right. I think that's about it for the production phase. I'm not sure if there's anything else that I can add. Yes.
When you are working on a game that has a lot of localization, let's say 8, 9 languages, how do you manage to trust the localization? I know you are a how do you ensure that all the languages or the regions are well localized?
So you have localization and then you have localization testing. And ideally, you're not doing the testing with the same company that you're localizing. Okay, so that's one. The testing is normally done by native speakers, meaning that you have people in Germany reading German text that is being localized in your game, making sure that it reads well. Also, you need to be very careful when you make your localization contract. The localization company is basically sourcing their translators from native speakers, not from people that have learned German in college.
Yeah.
While that may give you some okay-ish results, better than Google Translate, the problem is that they don't understand the colloquial language. So they may speak in a kind of weird pattern that feels alien to the natives that you ultimately want to market your title. So be careful that whoever you contract is using native translators, and then test with a different company.
You give localization services. You have native, or how many languages do you work language?
So we're not a traditional localization house in the sense that we ourselves, when we're asked to localize, we subcontract to boutique translators in multiple regions. So, you know, if we were actively selling our localization work stream as a business, we would probably look at having staff in Germany and in Russia and in Korea and, you know, basically producing those translations. And augmenting that maybe with freelancers in those regions. But we do have localization testers. So we have some natives, some expats in Romania that we contract to do that work for the main European languages, and that's it. For anything else, we work with freelancers in other countries. It's not super hard to find people that can and want to do that work these days, because a lot of people want to work from home, and you know, if you have a steady demand, it's not a bad income stream either. Some of these translators that we're working with are like $40 an hour, $50 an hour. That's not bad at all. You know, if you're fully booked, you're making a ton of money, but you're almost never fully booked. Yes.
What about if you have multiple producers in a team? I would assume like that's how much producers. If you got a technical producer or the marketing producer, who manages priorities and working in an agile environment? How does the information get into
So Agile tends to break down a little bit when we're talking about very large teams. Agile works great when you're in teams that are, you know, up to 20. It's very easy to put everyone in a Scrum meeting and do stand-ups with everyone. When you scale, so I'm going to start at the Agile level, like how we organize our team. You have, so when you grow, you start having individual Scrums per discipline or per section of the game. depending on how you, this is a matter of preference. And then you have a scrum of scrums with the discipline leaders. So let's say you have all the artists in a stand-up. They kind of talk about their work deliveries and the blockers amongst themselves. And then the art director goes into a scrum of scrums that has the technical director, the creative director, the producer, maybe a few key people, maybe the product manager, the economy designer, I don't know, a few other key people in this scrum of scrums, and they talk about their aggregate information. You know, I have 3 artists that are blocked by engineering, you know. So that's how you manage scale from an agile process perspective. Have to be very careful to then cascade down to everyone on the team what the conclusions of the scrum of scrum were, because they will not be in the meeting, so that stuff needs to be documented. And there's usually the scrum master has to actually do the log work for that. In terms of how to manage hierarchies, remember the rule of thumb. If you have one manager to more than 6 people, attention. If you have one manager to more than 8 people, you're pretty much in trouble at that point. So then you have to create a hierarchy. It means that you can't just have one creative director overseeing all the designers. You probably need to have under the creative. So let's give you a concrete example. You have 15 designers on the project. I know it seems like a large number, but you know, frankly, for AAA console PC games, not a huge number. And 15 are probably best broken between 3 managers, but you can probably make do, and you can make do with 2, right? So you have the creative director managing half of the team, and then you have another lead designer reporting to the creative director that manages the other half of it. So that's how you break the hierarchy. And as you know, the team scales beyond that, you obviously add another lead designer to act as a people manager. And it's a similar situation with all the disciplines.
Right.
Yes?
I was wondering in terms of how strict you usually are with the pipeline and process. Something that happened very quickly. I'm very methodical, and we designed a bunch of documents that outline the process, and that has to go to from one step to the next step. And I try to read every single one of them because I feel like if we skip some of them, that saves time in the short term, and then it creates like a
lot of toxins in the system, right? A lot of toxins in the system.
Yeah.
You know, skipping steps and then the quality is not quite where it's supposed to be.
On the other hand, my creative director is over me. Likes to be a little bit more flexible, and when there's like deadline has just like shortened, there's a really more event we have to show something. He
just pushes it.
Yeah, he's the same more like a sheriff, and he's more like a cowboy. So he likes to trust his gut feeling, and that sometimes backfires and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just really curious about what your thoughts are in following the process, and if you should be flexible or not.
Great question. No, the honest answer is that it's always a case-by-case basis. Principally, I am also a process person, and I find that especially on large teams, once the process has to be respected in order to have some coherence to the entire activity, and for everyone to play their part, and for you to really move things forward as a team as opposed to individual efforts, and you know, have predictability, have visibility, transparency to what you're doing. All of that stuff requires good process. So while I personally would err on the side of process, I can also see that sometimes reality bites really hard if you are rigid. Meaning that, yes, if you need to get the event out there in order to get revenue into this month, because otherwise you are not able to pay payroll, need payroll, you're just going to do it. Right. You have to do it. And then it's, try to arrange things so that you don't find yourself in that situation again. So yes, maybe you'll have some art that is not that finished quality because you pushed that event when it was supposed to go, as opposed to waiting later on until you have everything perfect, but you don't have money in the bank to make payroll. So I gave you like an extreme example, even though it actually does happen quite often in like any game dev environment. You don't have large coffers filled with money to account for any inefficiencies that you may generate in production. So I would say generally err on the side of process, but be reasonable when the situation demands a more fluid approach.
Right.
But that should really be kind of an exception, and
Right.
you have to kind of get everyone in the mindset, even if we don't respect this process, it will be an extraordinary event in the most strenuous of conditions, not something we do all the time. And if your producer, by the way, shoots from the hip all the time, that's a problem that you will have to solve.
Right.
And probably data is your best friend there. You can show him how often he was wrong. And if he's wrong, like, I don't know, 30% of the time, you can have a debate. Is it really worth it for our company for you to do that, shoot from the hip? Because it hurt us more than it helped us in the long run. So data is instructive. Okie dokie. So we spent quite a bit of time on production. I want to be cognizant that you guys are getting a little bit tired. It's cool. Do you want to power through post-production or should we take a short break? Short break. Okay. Awesome. A 15-minute break and let's be back in 3:20.
Thank you.